Hey everybody, it's Pastor Greg. It is so good to see you yet again in this space. I cannot believe that we are actually in a new month already. It is February 1st. I hope that the first 31 days of your year have been absolutely amazing, absolutely joyous, absolutely beautiful. I just want to send out a special note to everyone that is in the New York metropolitan area. If you are in this area, we want to see you here in this space. There is so much that you miss. We love that you enjoy the messages each week and you watch some of the music, but there's so much love waiting here for you. There's community that's waiting here for you. There's so much joy that's waiting for you. So we hope to see you this month or sometime soon here in the space. We are at 587 Franklin Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. Because it is a new month, that means we have a new series. So let's get into this series that is based on Byron Katie's The Work. Do you know that you're one? Do you know that you're one? When we use the word all, it includes us all. And that's a beautiful thing. That's powerful. That's so powerful. It includes us all. We are one with all that is. The flower, the sun, the trees, the cosmos, every human being on this planet, every animal on this planet. We are one with it all. Good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How's everybody doing? Good. It's good to see you all. It's good to feel your energy in the space, and it is good to be in a new month because that means we have a new series. Thank you, Roy, for sharing the series synopsis with us. The Work, 4 questions that can change your life. And you know, as I was thinking about this series and thinking about this message and the series of messages that Pastor Yolanda and I will be preaching this month, I was reminded of a quote that I'm sure we're all familiar with that's attributed to Wayne Dyer, right? And the quote says that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yes, yes. And what's interesting, Wayne Dyer says, he said, you know, I don't really know where I first heard this, but I heard this some time ago from a teacher. And then he gives us the quote. And of course, this quote has now been attributed to him. But it's a powerful, powerful, powerful quote. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Well, that says to me that you have power. That says to me that you have more power than maybe you were invited to think that you had. And so this is what we're going to be doing this month. We're going to be changing the way we look at things so that the things we look at change. And so I was reminded, as I was thinking about this, I was reminded of a time in my life about 9 or 10 years ago. I think it was about 9 years ago. And I found myself not really enjoying my life. I was separated at the time, going through a divorce. And the young lady that I was dating at the time, we had been dating a couple months and, you know, things seemed pretty cool. And then there came this day where we were going to go out. It was like after work. And I was really tired. I just had a long day. And I called her and I said, you know what, I'm really tired. Can we reschedule? And, you know, I just can't do today. And she cussed me out. I mean, I have never in my life been cussed out the way that I was cussed. I mean, she just pulled out the whole lexicon and told me about myself. And I kind of was looking at the phone like, is this real? And, you know, I thought things were cool and I don't get this, you know, where's this coming from? And I'm a nice guy and all of these things, right? And I found myself kind of just questioning what was going on. But I realized in that moment, I took a step back because I started to feel really depressed as I was just thinking about the rest of my life and all these things that were going on. And I didn't feel like I was doing what I wanted to do. And I wasn't really recording music. Actually, at that time, I had decided that I was not going to write or record anymore, actually. Can you imagine that? Right? But I decided that I was done with music. I wasn't going to write and record. I was just frustrated, and you know, my marriage was ending. And here I meet somebody else, and she's cussing me out. And it was like, you know, this is really, really bad. And I remember that I was going into Memorial Day weekend, and I didn't have any plans. I was just home by myself, alone in my apartment, feeling really bad for myself. And I realized in that weekend, I said, you know, something has to change. Like, I don't know what it is, but something has to change. And, you know, I've been meeting people and going to different workshops, and they keep telling me that I'm creating all this. But I don't believe them. But they keep telling me that I create my life, and actually everything, every body, every experience, it's all coming through me. But at this point of desperation and at this point of frustration, I said, well, maybe they're right, because everything that I've been trying is not working, right? Everything that I've been thinking is not accurate. So maybe they are. And so I remembered there was this movie that a friend of mine had told me about to check out, and it was called What the Bleep Do We Know? And I spent that weekend, I watched that movie several times, and for me, that was my light bulb moment. That was the thing that sort of opened it up for me to kind of see, you know what, okay, I see how I created this. Because actually her anger was mirroring all of the anger that I was holding in personally, trying to be nice as it related to the divorce, not wanting it to be nasty, not wanting it to be ugly, but having a lot of anger that I was repressing, having a lot of hurt that I was repressing, and I was seeing it, experiencing it viscerally through this woman that I was dating. She was a gift to me. She showed me exactly what was going on within me, right? It had nothing to do with her being a mean person. She's one of the sweetest people on earth. She really is. But I needed to see myself. She was reflecting me back to me so that I could make the changes and shifts that I wanted to make. And so this is where we're going to be going this month. I remember last month, we were talking about, I used a quote from Abraham, and we talked about being an observer versus a visionary. That being an observer, we're still saying that either life is happening to me, which I was at that moment. I was, in that time in my life, I was still in the victim place, that people were doing things to me. And, this person and that person was the reason why my life wasn't how it should be. And then we move from that place, from to me, to life is happening for me, which is a more elevated and powerful understanding, because we recognize that there's actually something going on here. I said she's a gift, right? That this was happening for me. I don't know why she cussed me out, but it's happening for me. But then we move to the visionary place, and we understand that life is actually happening through me, that I was seeing myself. The anger that she was expressing to me was me. Life is happening through me. In A Course in Miracles, one of the lessons in this past week, lesson 29, it says, real vision does not depend on the body's eyes at all. The mind is its only source. Real vision does not depend on the body's eyes at all. The mind is its only source. And so this is where we want to go. We want to talk about this source, the mind, our mind, as the source of vision, as the source of everything that's experienced. And so we say today, the topic is, it's time we had a little talk. And I was reminded of something that's interesting. I want to kind of tickle our left brains today so that we can get back to the right brain. Because, this is just an aside, but often we talk about, moving from the analytical mind to the spiritual mind as though there was something wrong with the logical reasoning mind. We need that mind. The goal is actually balance, so that there's a bridge and there's a conversation between both minds at all times. So that's what we're going to do today. And so I thought about what science tells us about the heart and the brain, which I think is interesting. That actually the heart is more powerful than our brain. It's a more powerful organ. It releases an electromagnetic field that spreads out about 8 feet from us, right? This is why you can feel people when they walk in the room. This is why you can, sense people even if you're not physically on them or in their space, right? The heart releases this electromagnetic field that is greater, more vast than the electromagnetic field that is emitted from our brain. One thing I love, this is so powerful to me, and I want us to sit with this, that in fetal development, when you were in your mother's womb, your heart was fully formed and beating before your brain was formed. Interesting. Your heart was fully formed and beating before your brain was formed. So that means that the brain is not informing the heart. Yes, yes? And so science also knows and has measured now that actually the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Science. But what I love is that if we can go to ancient teachings, we can go to scripture, we can go to the book of Proverbs, and now it makes a little more sense why in Proverbs 23 it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Why have we always had this idea about thinking with our heart? We look a little further in the book of Matthew and the book of Luke. Jesus says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. But shouldn't it be out of the overflow of your brain? Your mouth speaks, but that's not what it is. And our scientific reasoning actually shows us this. And so when I say that it's time for a little talk, what I'm really saying is it's time to have a heart-to-heart. It's time to have a heart-to-heart. Now, in the synopsis for this series, Roy shared this quote with us. I want to go back to it from Loving What Is. A thought is harmless unless we believe it. It's not our thoughts, but our attachment to our thoughts that causes suffering. Attaching to a thought means believing that it's true without inquiring. A belief is a thought that we've been attaching to, often for years. And so often, just as I was in that moment, in that time, 9 or 10 years ago, I was attaching to a thought that was causing suffering. In that case, it was the thought that, I needed to be nice and I needed to be kind, so I cannot express my anger. I need to push that aside, right? I had no means or way of expressing that because I thought that would be bad. But in the process of doing that, I was only creating more pain. I was creating it in new relationships. I was creating it at work. I was creating it in my music career. I was creating it everywhere. And I was like, this has to stop. And so I had to begin to look at, question, and examine my thoughts. Now, I want to take us back to science again. I want to tickle your left brain, and we want to talk a little bit more about the brain. What we know and what science, neuroscience, teaches us about how our brains work and how our brains handle these thoughts that we're thinking, which may or may not be true. So in our brain, we could break down the functions of the brain in sort of the smallest scale, but I want to keep us on a bigger scale. You can separate the brain into 3 sections, right? And the front part of the brain is where our higher reasoning happens, right? In the lower part of the brain, that's what we call our animal mind or monkey mind. That's where our basic functions come. That's where our stress is and our fight or flight mechanism. All of that is there. And then the middle part of the brain is where we'll find emotional response. Now, according to this research in the Journal of Neuroscience, they looked at one aspect of the brain, just this lower part of the brain. And in that lower part of the brain is where we find the hippocampus and the amygdala. Now, the hippocampus is where factual information is stored. Important. Right? And the amygdala is where emotional information is stored. And so we have this research, and it goes like this. In this new research, electrical signals in the brain associated with the formation of factual memories weaken, while areas in the brain associated with emotion strengthen. So according to these researchers, with increasing stress, our brains are wired to discount factual information and to rely heavily on emotional experiences. Our findings suggest that the growing dominance of amygdala activity over the hippocampus during and even after chronic stress may contribute to the enhanced emotional symptoms alongside impaired cognitive function seen in stress-related psychiatric disorders. What does that mean? Okay. So if you have a thought, say you're in a situation with your boss and you created a report or a project and your boss didn't like it. And so now all of a sudden you're worried because, I don't know, maybe I'm going to get fired or I won't get the raise that I wanted to get. All of a sudden you're starting to think stressful thoughts, right? And what's interesting about when we start to think stressful thoughts, I don't know if you've ever been in this place, maybe particularly if we're angry, all of a sudden you can't remember where things are. Maybe you're looking for, have you ever been like angry and then you're looking for your keys and who moved my keys and I can't find my keys. All of a sudden what this research is saying is that you actually lose access to factual information at the moment that you've taken in a stressful thought, at the moment that you've believed a stressful thought. And so what begins to happen, just as we see how law of attraction happens, that when we feel, maybe we look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm fat. I need to lose some weight. And then all of a sudden you begin to find every other flaw that's going on with you and with your life. Then all of a sudden you move from your weight to your relationships, from your relationships to your bank account, from your bank account to your relationship with your parents and from your grandparents and your kids and the people on the street. All of a sudden, all these things. But if you would stop for a minute to question these thoughts, you would have to realize that, oh, wait, maybe what I'm saying is not completely true. But what happens is, again, science is showing us in neuroscience that what happens is when we're in that place, we don't have access to the factual information that is always present and readily available. And so this is why it's important that we learn how to question these thoughts, inquire, look at them, and ask 4 simple questions, because when we ask those questions, we can potentially change our life. When we ask those questions, we come back in touch with what is. We come back in touch with reality. We let go of the illusions. We let go of the stress, and then chemically, we then have access to what is real, what is true. So I want to give a little background on Byron Katie to understand how she came to this powerful awareness. Byron Kathleen Reed became severely depressed while in her 30s. Over a 10-year period, her depression deepened, and for the last 2 years, Katie, as she's called, was seldom able to leave her bedroom. Then one morning, from the depths of despair, she experienced a life-changing realization. Katie saw that when she believed her thoughts, she suffered, and that when she didn't believe her thoughts, she didn't suffer. What had been causing her depression was not the world around her, but what she believed about the world around her. In a flash of insight, she saw that our attempt to find happiness was backwards. Instead of hopelessly trying to change the world to match our thoughts about how it should be, we can question these thoughts, and by meeting reality as it is, experience unimaginable freedom and joy. As a result, a bedridden, suicidal woman became filled with love for everything life brings. And so just in that little synopsis, we're seeing what science showed us. That all of a sudden, she questioned her thoughts, she examined her thoughts, and then that gave her access to a part of her brain that was always there. It gave her access to a receptive part of her brain that was always receiving information about what was real, what was true. But until she questioned the thought, until she looked at it and said, is this true? Is this absolutely true? She couldn't change her circumstance. She couldn't move into this unimaginable freedom and joy. And so the title of the book that we're using from Byron Katie is Loving What Is. And what does she say about loving what is? She says that the only time we suffer is when we believe a thought that argues with what is. When the mind is perfectly clear, what is what we want. If you want reality to be different than it is, you might as well try to teach a cat to bark. You can try, and in the end, the cat will look up at you and say, meow. Wanting reality to be different than it is hopeless. So let's breathe that in. Let's think about that, right? This takes me back to the message we preached in December on what happens when you believe a lie, right? Still trying to fight against but it shouldn't be that, but it shouldn't be that way, but it shouldn't be that way, right? But they should be nice to me. No, but they should have opened the door for me. And because you believe that thought, they should have opened the door for me, you're suffering, you've created pain. But as soon as you come to the reality that what happened, you can't argue with reality, right? What happened, then you can say, they shouldn't have opened the door for me. It was okay that they didn't open the door. They were being who they are, and that's okay, right? But so often, because we've accepted certain thoughts, we've accepted certain ways of being as though that is the only way, or that's the way that it must be, we have no access to the infinite possibilities of life. We sing at the end of every service, all things are possible. If we believe that all things are possible, then shouldn'ts can't exist, right? Because we recognize that there are infinite pathways, and we just happen to know a couple. That's all. And we think the couple that we know is law, like that's it. But it's not, right? All things are possible, right? And so we have the 4 questions, and I want to share these 4 questions because we're going to be using them this month. And again, next week and the following week, we're actually going to, for those who are brave, those who are ready, those who are courageous, and have some thoughts that they want to examine. Pastor Yolanda and I will facilitate the work, and we can all experience what that freedom and joy looks like. So the 4 questions are simple. Number 1, is it true? Number 2, can you absolutely know that it's true? And these are just yes or no questions, just yes or no. 3, How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? Number 4, who would you be without the thought? And what's beautiful about that last question, who would you be without the thought? This is when we're accessing factual information. This is now when we're moving to the higher reasoning part of the brain. Because once you can imagine who you would be without the thought, they should have opened the door, and you let go of that thought, they didn't have to hold the door. They didn't have to open the door. It was fine that they didn't open the door. I can open the door for myself, right? Who would you be without that thought? Well, all the stress that you felt, all of that anger, all of that pissed offness that leads to the rest of your day going a certain way, right? And this is why what we talked about with law of attraction and Abraham is very important to what we're talking about now. Because the thing is, when we believe that thought, the problem is that creates more of that same energy and vibration in our day. Do you understand that? Right? They should have stopped for me. They should have said hello. I speak to her every week. She don't speak to me. She should have spoke. Right? She should have spoken to me. But again, the issue is that stance, holding that thought, believing that thought, creates more of that because the thought is energy. And so that creates the rest of our day sort of follows this she should have vibration. He should have, they should have, the government should have, the police should have, our city should, all of these. See, and then we just find more and more things to complain about, right? Then we attract situations, circumstances, and opportunities for more complaints. Then people start complaining about you. Then you get more upset. You see what happens? Who would you be without that thought? Well, I'd be free. I could focus on my desires. I could focus on my purpose. I could focus on what really matters to me. I could focus on what really feels good. I could have an enjoyable lunch this afternoon. I could do all of these things. I could open my mind to new ideas, right? I could receive new information. I could receive insight on this problem that I have in my life. And so as I go back to my own situation and my own story, essentially I came to that place of being able to say, okay, well, who would I be without this thought? Because I've been thinking that my way was the way. I've been thinking that I knew a lot. I've been going to these workshops and hearing people say this, and every time I side-eye it, like, yeah, whatever. That sounds nice, and on a certain level, yeah, I want to manifest a car. Yeah, cool. I create my life. I want to manifest a car, so that's true. But my relationships, that ain't got nothing to do with that. That has nothing to do with that, My marriage, no, this has nothing to do with that. I didn't create that situation. This other relationship, somebody cussing me out, I didn't create that. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't attract that. It has nothing to do. It's not the universe responding. No, that has nothing to do with that. But money, yeah, I want more money. So yeah, I create my life over here in the money world, right? I could not accept that was true. I couldn't, because then it put the onus on me to make the changes, and I didn't know how at the time. But once I came to this place of saying, you know what? I don't know it all. I obviously don't know it all. But most importantly, this does not feel good. This does not feel good. And whether you're like Byron Katie and depressed and suicidal, that she tells the story of how she used to just sleep on the floor and let the roaches crawl on her, and she was in a bad way, right? Whether you're there or have been there, you don't have to be there. Just whatever thought you're thinking, whatever's going on, and it doesn't feel good. Again, it creates a sense of angst in you. Just your emotions are never just right, and you recognize that as you're feeling that, as you're thinking that, you recognize that my day kind of goes right along with that. Maybe it's time to ask these 4 questions. First, is it true? And this is what we're just talking about today. Is it true? Maybe there's another possibility. Maybe there's another way. I need to lose weight right now. Is that true? Right? Because you actually can't lose weight right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that thought, I need to lose weight. You're looking at yourself in the mirror. I need to lose weight. And you feel bad and you feel depressed. And now you don't even want to go out. And you know, you start to try on clothes and this one is too tight and that. And you try something else on and oh, Lord. And, well, all right, I'm going to save these clothes because I'm going to fit in them one day. But I still got to find something to put on later. Like, I need to lose weight right now. But you can't lose weight right now. Some way, somehow, you have to find a way to feel good about right now in order to move out in the world and eventually lose the weight, release the weight that you want to release. So is that thought really true? And what's really informing that thought, right? Now, after we ask the 4 questions, who would I be? Is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do I react? What happens when I believe that thought? And then who would I be without the thought? Then you're invited to turn it around. And it has to be what feels good. I don't need to lose weight right now. Right? It could be, you know, if it's not, I don't need to lose weight right now. I am doing the best that I can right now to lose the weight. Right? Could be. When someone doesn't open the door for you, he should have opened the door. He should have held the door, but he didn't. Right? How do you turn that around? He did what he was supposed to do. Right? We recognize we have no idea what was going on. Maybe he didn't see you, didn't even know you were there. That's happened. We've all been on both sides of that. Person just didn't even know you were there. That's all that happened. All of a sudden you feel a little better. You realize that you weren't a victim to that situation, right? So in closing, I want to share this last little bit. And I encourage you, as you go through this week, to just look at the thoughts that you're thinking that create pain, that create angst, that create frustration for you, right? Just look at them and maybe ask yourself, is this true? And if you say yes, cool. But just ask that first question, right? And so Byron Katie, she offers us something here that's very interesting. She writes, I can find only 3 kinds of business in the universe. Mine, yours, and God's. For me, the word God means reality. Reality is God because it rules. Anything that's out of my control, your control, and everyone else's control, I call that God's business. To think that I know what's best for anyone else is to be out of my business. Even in the name of love, it is pure arrogance, and the result is tension, anxiety, and fear. Do I know what's right for me? That is my only business. Let me work with that before I try to solve your problems. If you understand the 3 kinds of business enough to stay in your own business, it could free your life in a way that you can't even imagine. The next time you're feeling stress or discomfort, ask yourself whose business you're in mentally, and you may burst out laughing. That question can bring you back to yourself, and you may come to see that you've never really been present, that you've been mentally living in other people's business all your life. Just noticing that you're in someone else's business can bring you back to your own wonderful self. And so as we're looking at our thoughts, another thing to understand is whose business are we really in? So often the things that stress us out the most, again, it's about what we think they should be doing, what he should be doing, what she should be doing, what that group of people should be doing, what our landlord should be doing, what our boss should be doing, what our children should be doing or not doing, what our partners should or should not be doing. When you have a thought and it doesn't feel good and it stresses you out, ask yourself a question, whose business am I in right now? Whose business am I in right now? And unfortunately, most of the time, we're not in our business. Why is that true? Because most of the time, we're not present. If we were in the present moment, we'd be in our own business, worried about or thinking about, conscious of what's going on in our own lives. And when we're aware of our own business and in our own business, then that's when we get to create the life that we want. Because as we talked about last week, I can't create in your experience and you can't create in mine. which means that anytime I'm trying to create in your experience, I'm sending my power outside of me in the most useless, ineffective way I ever could, because it doesn't work. Whose business are we in? Because that usually is the cause of so much suffering for us. So think about your thoughts. Look at your thoughts. Examine your thoughts. Ask yourself, is it true? It may or may not be. And then ask yourself, as I'm thinking this thought, whose business am I in? Am I in my business? Am I in their business? Or am I in God's business? Well, am I in God's business? Let's talk about that. Some people didn't think it should have snowed this week. Some people were upset and angry about the snow. Now, if you weren't angry or upset about the snow, then of course everybody was upset with de Blasio and they were upset with Cuomo. In their business, creating all of this emotion within themselves. You see this? This is perfect, right? It was awesome to me to watch and look on Facebook, all of the complaints. And I'm like, but you don't work in government. You didn't run for office. You're not a governor or a mayor. Like, you don't run the MTA system. Like, why are you in their business? And why are you allowing that to put you in such a space that you got to complain about it on Facebook and tweet about it? Whose business are we in? Because, we had a wonderful opportunity. Most of us had that time off. We had the wonderful opportunity to kick back and enjoy, right? And so many people that I talk to, they had wonderful times with their kids, and they played video games. Yolanda and I watched movies and, just ate food and had a good time, right? I wasn't in their business. It didn't matter what choice they made. I had actually already made my choice. On Sunday of last week, I made my choice what I was going to be doing. I was going to stay home no matter what, blizzard or not, right? It didn't matter how bad the snow was, right? So then we find out, okay, we didn't get 2 feet. We got about a foot or less. So now we're in the universe's bit. Well, it didn't snow like it was supposed to. And it's hilarious. And this is exactly what Byron Katie is speaking to, that when we actually take the time to stop and look at it and say, well, whose business are we in? We find that it's incredibly humorous. It's incredibly humorous. And then we can forgive ourselves. We can love ourselves and say, oh, my goodness, okay, I was in somebody else's business. I was siphoning off my energy, right? Let me bring all that energy back in. Why? Because I care about how I feel. Why? Because I have things that I want to create. Why? Because I have dreams. I have a vision. I have goals in my life. And I know that I need all of this energy that I possess to create that which I am choosing to create. But when I put my thoughts out here, when I put my thoughts out there, I don't have access to my higher reasoning mind, and then I cannot create the life that I choose. And so on that, I ask everyone to stand. Mother, Father, God, I am so grateful to be here in this space one more time. I'm grateful for the awareness that each and every one of us are experiencing in this moment as we have the opportunity to use our power powerfully and to use our intelligence intelligently. We recognize that we are the creators of our life. We recognize that life is not just happening to us for us, but it's happening through us. And as we know that to be true, we are choosing to examine our thoughts. Any thought that creates anxiety, any thought that creates stress, any thought that creates worry, any thought that creates doubt, we are choosing to look at it and ask a simple question. Are you true? We are choosing to sit down with ourselves and have a little talk, have a heart-to-heart, and say to ourselves that maybe it's time for us to think differently. Maybe it's time for us to look at this thought that has created so many interesting things in our world, to look at it and ask it if it's true. And at the moment that we can see another possibility, we have destroyed the power of that thought. it can no longer create in the way that it was creating in our lives. As soon as we look at that thought and examine it, we move up even in our brains to a place where we can see now infinite possibility, that we can see that there is another way, that we can see our own freedom, that we can unlock the door and walk out of the jail because we recognize that we always possess the key. We can run free. As soon as we look at the thought, we are choosing to run free. We are choosing to be the free beings that we have been created to be. Even the thought that we are anything other than free, it is untrue. We are free beings living in a free world. And so we declare our independence from any thought that does not serve us. We declare our independence from the belief in any thought that creates that which we do not want. And so we march through this week in joy. We march through this week aware, awake, and alive, knowing that we possess all that we need and all that we desire to absolutely create the world that we want. For this, we are so very grateful. We release these words now back into you, back into cause, of knowing that the fruit of our words will bloom and blossom easily and effortlessly, effectively, efficiently, and elegantly. We are so very grateful, and so we lift up our voices and we say, Amen, Amen. Ashe. Ashe. And so it is.